We are all guilty of using stereotypes, and at one time or another, we've judged a person or a group of people. At some point, we have all unintentionally assumed we understood a person's culture based on a single story. That small portion of that person's culture that was shown to us either through books or media. I'm Melissa Bako, and this is my EDOL 722 reflection on the dangers of a single story. We all know that everybody is different. We're all different in countless ways. Yet when we encounter others, we often rely on generalizations to describe them. In the TED Talk, Chimada's theory is that many Westerners, especially Americans, believe what they believe about people from marginalized backgrounds or from foreign places because they were so reliant on that single story. At first glance, I may look like a typical white Southern California beach bum girl, blonde hair, blue eyes, maybe not very intelligent, thinking about when my next plastic surgery is. However, by only focusing on what you see in my exteriors, you may be creating a single story stereotype about me. Not that I'm highly educated, that I'm a transplant from here, that I lived in a small town growing up, and California isn't my native home. The view is you're relying on a single story. For me personally, growing up in a small white town, my only experience with the Hispanic culture is Mexican food that my mom made, and driving down the street to go to the Mexican restaurant. This was my single story about the Hispanic culture and Hispanic food. In 2003, when I moved out here, I was dropped into a middle of a melting pot with numerous Hispanics and Latinos and Latinas, and it blew my eyes and opened my eyes wide open, because I had my single story that I had growing up about the Hispanic people and culture wasn't the only story. So it's a lot of the stereotypes that we encounter are demographic stereotypes, and by my case in this story was where I grew up in my exposure. I also see the danger of a single story directly related to the achievement gap here in education. In districts across America and throughout the world, there are children who are educated in the most simple and least expensive way possible. Cultures are reduced to the basics, and characters in books are often one-dimensional. These extremes, generalizations, must be combated with opinions, with choices, with the time necessary to dive into the thickness of a culture or to see the bottom of the iceberg, rather than associating a single image or stereotype with an entire country or an entire continent. There's a valuable lesson to learn from Chimada's TED Talk that we can all bring to our schools and our classroom: a realization, appreciation, and understanding that each student has his or her own complex, multi-tier story. We can and should teach students the dangers of only knowing a single story. Through social networking, students can use technology to connect with other students across the world in varying cultures, to be able to gain a deeper understanding and appreciation of worldwide cultures. It is vital to introduce students at the earliest ages to different narratives. My hope as an assistant principal and as an educational leader is to be able to continue to allow students to challenge their own opinions and not accept a single story is truth before considering what the other side of the story might be. It is important to reflect on the relationships between the ways that we think about others and the ways that we treat others. Power is the ability not just to tell a story of another person, but to make it a definitive story of that person. The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is that they are untrue, but they are also incomplete. They make one story become the only story.